redevelopment agency that is funded out of a portion of the sales tax and 5/6 of the amount of reassessed property value. So therefore, when you sell your home, the new property tax that is charged to that new purchase price, 5/6 of that amount would ultimately go into the redevelopment. That's right. Now, from that money, because remember it came from low to moderately low housing, then there was a designation that 20 cents on every dollar that the RDA received would go into that special low to moderate housing fund. That's where Clark Terrace came from, the new addition to Clark Terrace, the Senior Citizen Center, the garden, and a bunch of other things come out of that redevelopment agency for low to moderate housing. Most of the people that live in there can barely survive. They don't even have enough money left after they pay rent to pay a phone bill. And that's a tragic part of Social Security and how we take care of seniors, but that's another issue. So that left 80% of that money in the redevelopment agencies. And for 436 agencies in 2010, there was $5 billion that was in RDA funding all up and down the state in cities and counties, $5 billion. Norco's part of that was a little over $5 million a year. A lot of money for a small city. Remember, we only got about 26,000 people. But what we did before I got on council is we classified different areas of the town as redevelopment agencies, redevelopment zones. And it was based on blighted conditions, and that's a very gray area. When you start looking into what is classified as a blighted area, and by definition, anything that can be improved, tore down, rebuilt for something else that will generate taxes can be classified as a blighted element in that redevelopment agency. The purpose of it, the 80%, what money was left over, was designed to enhance business development, cure blight conditions, and make the place a better place to live in the long run. Doing it legally, using the funds the way you're supposed to entice business to come to your area that are going to generate sales tax that ultimately will help you fund your projects within the city. Remember, we live and die, as Kevin Bash says, on property tax. Sales tax, right. And we get very, as I said, you can say a limited amount of sales tax that generate probably 38 to 40% of what we need, and that's most of that comes out of the auto mall. When we had the redevelopment agency, we were flying high. There was money flying right and left. We had over $7 million in reserves. All the bills were paid. CIP had money in them. And what we were doing was we were trying to entice businesses to come into town and keep businesses in town. So therefore, loans were made to some of the auto mall, elements of the auto mall, to keep them in Norco. At one time, we were looking at Bass Pro to move into Hamner and Hidden Valley Parkway. They wanted no sales tax for 15 years. They wanted us to buy the building lease it back to them for $1 a year, on and on and on. They were using us, I truly believe they were using us as an incentive for Ontario, Rancho Cucamonga area to get them down to where they eventually ended up in the Victoria Gardens, which is a Lewis Development Corporation. Lewis is one of the biggest corporations in California as far as development, apartments, things like that. They said no, so we ended up getting very limited business in town because of that. You have to remember that all you're doing with that redevelopment is talking somebody into going to Corona by an incentive to get them to buy in Norco. So you're throwing money at them to get it. And all you're doing is transferring sales tax, is all you're doing, nothing else. You're transferring sales tax. But what it did was, with that money, it allowed the blighted areas, the streets, the trails, and other things to be improved because they were in a blighted condition or in a specific RDA zoned area. Now, the problem. In 2011, and eventually 2012, when Governor Brown shut it down because he realized there was a chunk of money that was floating in that RDA to balance his state budget. Because you remember, the taxes that were generated that were going into RDA, there's supposed to have been a flip to that, to where a certain portion of that went to the schools. When RDA started taking the majority of that, there was still a commitment by the voters to still maintain an input into the schools. Therefore, the state of California had to make that difference up. So what you ended up doing was, he was already in a deficit, he was giving money to the schools, he's seen $5+ billion sitting over here, and said, I'm going to close down redevelopment. So that's what he did. There was a fight in the Supreme Court, California Supreme Court, and ultimately he was successful in it, in closing it down. Doesn't mean, oh, by the way, we had $145 million in debt to the RDA, to bondholders all over the United States and some of the other countries as well. It was $145 million. That's paid off by what they classified as a successor agency that was formed under the Department of Finance, where each agency set up a successor agency that oversees and makes recommendations for payments to that RDA bond that we've got out there. That's what their jobs are. And then they report that budget to the Department of Finance, and then ultimately Riverside County then cuts the check for it. While the RDA was going hot and heavy, the city, 2000, when I got on council in 2000, there was $1.3 million that was being paid to the employees that weren't working in RDA items. Is that legal? I asked you, is that legal? They're not working in RDA and you're paying them a salary, is it legal? No, it's not legal. So I'd already looked at the budget, and then when I got on council, the first thing I went into Jerry Johnson and told him, that's the city manager at the time, I said, okay, we got a problem. You're paying over $1.25 million a year for salaries for workers that are not working RDA projects. That has to stop. You got to stop it right now. It took him 2 years, and then he left, Took him 2 years to get it down to where you were getting paid from general funds and from RDA money. But you still got a paycheck as a regular Norco employee. You just didn't know what department it was coming from. Sewer, water, RDA, general fund. But the fact is, I learned early on, and Harvey did too, I learned early on that 80% was ended up being a cash cow for the city of Norco. That means that there was $3+ million every year that was floating that could be used for a bunch of projects in the name of blight. We fought it. Some of us did. We fought it. We ended up on the, and these are public records. I'm not saying anything as a mayor that I shouldn't be saying. We fought it because we didn't agree with some of the stuff that was being spent. RDA monies was being spent on. You can start to see a pattern developing. Okay, now we get to 2012, when the governor, we're already in a recession, so sales taxes bottomed out. There's no money for coming in. I mean, we're dealing with 30% of what we had before total. So we started cutting staff and fire department. Not me, because I wasn't on council then. I took 4 years off because I believe in term limits. So I took 4 years off before I came back. But the monies in RDA was starting to be used for a vast majority of things because there was no money anyplace else. The funds were empty. When he signed it, he pulled all of the money out of the agencies and said, cut me a check, give it to me. That left the city of Norco, who had been using $3+ million a year for blight, that had to give that money up. And what are they going to do? They cut service? That's the question that we're at right now, is as an elected official, do I believe that the city citizens should pay for infrastructure of the city? Absolutely not. I don't believe so. I don't know. Did you ask for Pikes Peak Park at the tune of $3.5 million out of DAG fees? Did you ask for $1 million for a snack bar at Wayne Macon? Just, and it just goes on and on and on, where you get to a point to where eventually you say, whoa, wait a minute. I've had enough. Okay, well, we can't fund anything. We have no money left. So now we need an ad hoc committee report to look at our budget and tell us where we're short, because we don't know. We know, we want somebody else to tell us where we're at. And they come back and say, well, that's fine. You're $4 million short. You need a sales tax increase. Do we need a sales tax increase? Have we got us? And that was probably precluded this whole thing, is if you're truly, and I said this in the first ad hoc committee report, our mission is to look and find out where we're short. But I'm telling you right now, and it said it's on record, I'm telling you right now, if we don't cut where we need to cut and can cut, There's no way that I'm gonna be able to go in front of these people and say, I want you to pay 1% more sales tax a year. You to pay 1% more, because I want you to fix my road in front of my house, because we've got a 68% PMI rating, and I want it up to 72% PMI rating. Doesn't sound like very much, except that it's almost $3 million a year to bring it up to that level. So, is 68% okay? It is for me if I don't have to pay a 1% sales tax, it is. But my point being, don't tell me that you haven't cut something and now you're telling me that I'm supposed to bite a 1% sales tax. I'm not gonna do it. Unless you can convince me that you've cut everything that you can cut. There's nothing else. You're to the bare bones right now. You've closed everything you can. You re-evaluated the streets, and you want to stay at 67, 60%, 67, 68%, and save yourself $1,200,000 a year. How do you want to do it? Well, which brings me to the ad hoc committee report. They started out with a 4.3, 4.4 shortage. Not enough revenue, spending too much. Call it a shortage all you want to. You're just spending too much money. And when they brought the report back to council, we looked at it and said, we want you to go back and look at a 35% cut is what we want you to do. I think that was my fault because I didn't tell them to look at a 35% cut across the board with all of the infrastructure needs. That's my fault, I didn't do that. I just said look at a 35% cut. What they did was they went and looked back and took 35% out of each budget item. There was discussion early on about closing parks, and the people that brought that up in the ad hoc committee got really rebuffed because of it, to a point that they were almost chastised, because parks is what everybody wants. And well, if you can afford them, parks would be really nice. If you can't afford them, then that's a different story. You need things that are generating an equal amount of expenses that it's costing you to run the thing. If you don't, you need to look at something to enhance it or close it down. Now, at council meeting, when we were talking about the ad hoc report, what I said was, I'm not going to support this measure. I'm not going to support it because you haven't convinced me that you've cut everything that you can cut. You can't, yeah.
I know what, okay, and the 4 point whatever million per year, that's just to bring the streets and infrastructure up to grade, and that's going to take 20 years at that price, or, so I remember something about an additional $1 million to maintain also, the ones that are brought up.
If you maintain the existing level that you got right now with the $6 million in Measure A funding, which has to be included in on it. That varies too.
Yeah.
They say 6 million, but it could easily be 5.25. But fact is,
a minimum of 20
if
years
you use that, you're looking at maintaining a 67, 68%. You need about $1.7 million to $2 million.
Thank you.
Okay. You don't need the 3.7 or so on to bring it up to the 72%. So let me go through this quick, and then you can kind of get on with your agenda that you've got going. This is what I had for the council meeting discussion on that ad hoc. there was no, we were already running late, big time late. So I didn't get a chance to cover them all, but I'm gonna cover them now. In the staff report, there was a line in the staff report, and you often look for something that will either convince you that it's a good thing or convince you that it's a bad thing. In the staff report, there was 2 lines in that staff report that was multiple pages. And what it said was, at the end of whichever sunset clause you want, 5, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you will be where you were at when you started the sales tax increase. Not any better. You will be the same, because there will not be any money once you stop the money coming in. Nothing has changed except you've been putting money into something that was broke from the beginning and never fixed. I'm not speaking for the other council people, I'm speaking for the city. I'm speaking for the points that I was making as the mayor under my comments. And I even said, these are mine. I'm sure a lot of people have more items. There's a lot of people that may disagree with what I'm saying because they favor a specific item over others, and I don't have a problem with that. But what you need to do is you need to look at the whole package, how we got here, how we're going to get out of it, and throwing money at something that's already broke. It's like putting a new set of tires on a car that's got a broke engine. I mean, what's the new set of tires supposed to do for you? Some of these have been around for years that we've been talking about, but there's never been enough votes on council to implement a program like this, because we always had the money to draw from. It wasn't until 2012 when we didn't have that money anymore. So you can get creative, but if you don't have 3 votes on that council to do things that need to do, you are not going to get things passed. You're going to be in the short end of the vote. And for the first 8 years that me and Harvey was on council together, we were on the short end of the vote a whole bunch of times. Whole bunch. These are suggestions. Ted's brought it up again. A banner program for the arena. I counted. We can put 165 banners in those 2 arenas. Even if we charge $1,500 a year, that's money coming in. Lease the name of the arenas. Carina, Marino Arena. Hire an event manager. I've been talking about this since '02, and I never got 3 votes to do it. Now we might. Hire an event manager that books, has a salary, and a commission based on what he promotes for those arenas, both of them, including Nellie Weaver Hall.
Can you give us an idea? I kind of remember some of it, but I'm getting old. Why they would not go for something as brilliant as that? Why you could not get 3 votes?
The point of discussion was, well, isn't the staff member that's in charge of it, isn't she doing a good job?
No.
Well, that's beside the point. It doesn't, look, I've been in 40 years, I've been in management, but 40 years. Started when I was 17 years old. If I've learned one thing in all of that time, if you do not look at something, even though it may be working great, but you've got to have enough intuition to realize it's not going to work forever. You need to look at something that will make it better. Hire somebody that is a pro in renting arenas, Nellie Weaver Hall, and places like that. It'll cost you money, $42,000, $45,000, and a commission. You don't think with that, I'd do that myself and have that thing rented out almost every day up there if I could get a 10 to 12% commission. I mean, that's reality. There's people hungry out there that's in business to do this. Ingalls Park, because of the efforts of Ted, Glenn, and Ed Dixon, with the amount of efforts that they put into that arena, keeping it groomed, packing it for events, have saved this city a chunk of money, a true chunk of money in the efforts that they've made. But the fact is, even with that amount of money that they're saving, we still do not break even at Ingalls Park. It costs us money every year to have that facility up there. Now, do you think an event manager will solve that problem? I do.
Herb,
Yeah.
what is the actual percentage? I know it goes up and down because sometimes we have more events one week than another, but an average, what actually is, we hear from 40% to 70%. What is an average of what is actually bringing back in? Maybe Ted might know that. I don't
As far as revenue that's generated based on assuming that 100%
As far
you
as
need to
the
break
payment.
even,
Right.
we're right at 90–92% right now.
Or that, with the movie of that.
And with the overrides and things, you're looking at $150,000, $175,000 is roughly what you're looking at. Now, that's to break even. That's not to make no money. And that's my point. That's my point.
We're not doing that, that's what I'm saying.
No,
What-
we're not.
What are we doing? I mean, where are we as far as trying to get to that figure?
Brian Petrie is trying to come up with block dates, combining 3 to 4 days together and not individually pricing them, combining them together to get a one block fee for the days. We're trying to accommodate with the extra arena space to stage their items and not charge them. We're trying to bring things in so they will come back. They like what we've got. The alpaca shows, the mini drivers, they like what we've got. Would they pay a little bit more? I don't know. I don't know. We haven't really did a price comparison. Since Carnation Ring closed down and they did a mini version over at the Pomona Fairgrounds, we're picking up a lot of the Class A shows that used to be over at the Carnation Ring. We're starting to pick those up, which is great. But we still need somebody that's a marketing manager, somebody that can market and do a real good job.
Yeah. I know we're not at 90%. I was looking for the realistic average of what we're doing. Maybe Ted or Lance may know what their average is.
As far as percentage,
Yeah.
that's it.
We're bringing in 90% of what we're putting out. We're losing.
You're bringing in 90% of the 100%. You're still 10% short to break even.
But we're still losing $500,000 a year. So how can you be
Not
at
quite
90?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite that.
Okay.
Yeah, 175,000, give or take a few, depending on what shows and how much we charge. That's just one. Now we can start into the Quimby Act. Anybody know what a Quimby Act is? That's because you're on Parks and Rec. You're supposed to.
Well, you asked.
Quimby Act is a state of California regulation that says that based on a certain amount of population, the city's got to have so many acreage of parks. if you have the amount that you need, when there's a development that comes into town, rather than building a park, they usually donate a space of land and says, here, this is your park space. You don't have to take that. You can take an in lieu fee. And for some reason, the city believes that in lieu fees are death, and we don't want to do that. We want a park. The problem is when the state of California says that you need 235 acres for a size of 26,000 people, and you've got almost 700, almost 3 times what you're supposed to have, then when does the park need stop and common sense prevail? And I'm not criticizing them, because this was going on when I was on Parks and Rec in '97. Because I started there, Parks and Rec, Streets and Trails and Planning.
Not okay.
Scary. Scary. My point being, is there parks, and I'm not talking about closing them down and fencing them. I don't know. I'm talking about closing them down and selling them, taking the money and then putting it into a special asset fund for rainy days emergencies. We got $2 million, a little over $2 million in that right now from prior things that we've sold and we've put in that fund.
How are you gonna zone it?
Half, I'm sorry,
How are you gonna zone that?
well, that's when we get ready, it's a good question. Good question. Everybody says you can't touch Snipes Park because that was donated to the city by the flood control. Only a certain acreage of that was donated. You can take the front half of that and sell it as commercial and bring in taxes and leave the back part of it as a park, but split it. Let's think about it a minute. You drive by that park and you see 10 or 12 people there. I would much rather say, let's rezone that front part as commercial retail and then bring in some businesses. Ted Brooks Park, you drive by there and there's nobody there. Parameter Park. Commercial for Snipes, housing for Ted Brooks, housing for Parameter now.
Can I
Rock
interrupt you?
Springs, yeah, Rock Springs, put that in housing too.
No, we like
So-
your business.
Where are the T-ball kids supposed to play if you take away perimeter park?
There's still open space at Wayne Macon.
But you guys, every year you put the city T-ball at perimeter park. Okay, sorry. So that's where the kids that play T-ball and the parents that pay money to the city play. So you're gonna put them in the other park. Why hasn't that been done before?
Because you need 3 votes to even think about closing anything down in this town.
What about, so why are we using this park where we're having problems with practice? Where practices are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for T-ball when parents can't even go to their kids' practices. If you have space at another park. And then now you're saying close it because we don't need it.
Sell it.
Okay, sell it because we don't need it, but you're still using it right now.
How much are we using? 10%, 12%, 15%?
Well, I don't know, but T-ball is important to my
Well,
family.
I'm not
and
denying it's
just like horses are important to other people.
I'm not denying that fact. What I'm saying is it cost effective to keep the park open with the lights, maintaining the bathrooms for a usage of 10 to 12%?
Okay,
That's what I'm saying,
okay,
when that use can be transferred someplace else.
okay. That was my question, where would you take, you answered that you
Yeah.
would move them. Okay.
Rock Springs, housing. Now this is Clark Field. Everybody know where Clark Field is on Detroit? You get Detroit. Did you know that
Detroit Hammer?
there was a proposal 6, 7 years ago from Caldwell Banker to take and build a commercial center from Detroit all the way through that complex to Hamner and turn that whole section into commercial. Rob Cozell said he would. His only stipulation was he wanted in the very back the Maverick to be moved back there, and then you could have his place. The other stuff had been up for sale for years. The problem was that park, nobody wanted to close it. When can it get to be a point to where there's a law of diminishing returns that say you can't continue doing what you're doing, it's not generating enough money to cover the expenses, when you've got a proposal that was on the table to do that whole section there. And it's still there, only Lewis wants to do it now. Buildings. Which ones? Well, the library is getting ready to move. That section of buildings floods. It's got a facade on it. It's not the original building that it was in the 40s. Is there going to be a fight to close it down? Well, there's a money issue to keep it open. If the library moves, they pay $30,000 a year to the building across the street because they've outgrown the building. There's not much left in that to save. So would that fit in the Caltrans park and ride? That's already been moved on the other side. There's all kinds of things that play into it. Any program that's not paying its own way, then we need to look at it. Yeah, we get into some real hot issues. Any idea how many part-time employees we got in that?
All of them.
Remember with Obamacare, if you work less than 30 hours a week, you're not qualified for insurance. So that's classified as part-time. 30 hours and more is classified for benefits. We've got about 42 part-time workers. If you eliminate a portion of what I've talked about so far, you will eliminate 15 to 18 part-time people. Outsourcing. Bad word if you're a union person. If you work in management, you look at ways to save money. You eliminate salaries, you eliminate benefits, you eliminate long-term health insurance, you eliminate a portion of the retirements when you outsource people because you're paying somebody a salary to do the same thing. There's 2 departments that we need to outsource. You're going to eliminate salaries, benefits, insurance, and unfunded liabilities. If you do that, you're going to eliminate 8 to 10 people. Streets. We talked about this a little bit. PMI rating 67, 68. Maintaining the way it is right now, you need about $1.7 million to do it. The budget says 3 million. Isn't that it, 3?
To keep it at the 2.8, little over 2. That includes measure.
Yeah. So my point being, we don't live in a Cadillac age anymore. We don't have a slush fund that we can deal with. If you want to maintain what we've got, then you need to vote for something. But realizing that you're going to throw money at something that's not fixed. So when the money stops at the sunset, you still got the same problem that you had before.
So didn't the ad hoc committee address all this and over the last year or two that they've been going at this?
No,
Wouldn't they open up their eyes as management like you've been, I'm sure quite a few people in here? You got a budget, you look at that budget, you look at what your expenses are, you look at everything that's going on, you don't just pigeonhole yourself. Why wouldn't they spend the time to
Did you
look
go
at
to-
all these different things?
did you go to any of the meetings? I know we work and it's hard.
No, unfortunately, I just kind of started getting involved in the last few months.
Whenever somebody would bring a topic up about closing a park or doing this or redefining a infrastructure need, they were jumped on like a bird on a piece of worm.
By other ad hoc personnel or
Some
by
of the
city
ad hoc-
people?
Some of the ad hoc and some of staff as well. Yes, Jeff?
There was a phrase that was used a lot, though, that said it's outside of our purview. So based on the chairperson's understanding of their mission, they weren't necessarily looking on purpose at every possible solution. They were concentrating on the CIP budget.
But wasn't their purpose to figure out a way to fix the problem with the city? And if that's your purpose, then there are no limitations. You look at everything.
Well, they didn't have that wasn't their original mission statement. Their original mission statement was to find out how much we need for the 5 CIP departments. They did that, they reported back to the city council, and then they were directed to go back and look at cutting. They took that to mean cutting, and they come up with the 35%, cutting it across the board. And by doing that, you only need a 0.5% sales tax, not a full percent. But you still haven't solved the problem. Now, these are not off the wall things. These are things that are going on all up and down the state. If we're not working in a Cadillac program anymore, and let's face it, guys, we were in a Cadillac program. When we had a bunch of money floating around, and we used to stay at council meetings till 12, 1 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out how to spend money. No joke, because we'd have 2 or 3 items on the agenda on how to spend money, and we'd argue about where to spend it at. Employee benefits. They get 18 holidays a year. The average is 8. They get $1,500 a year medical. The average is $900. They get sick time buyback programs. Most of the time, if you don't use it by the end of the calendar year, you lose it. There's no buyback period. With the new law, they said now that you can have 3. And if you don't use it, you can carry it over. You go over these things, I calculate roughly almost $3 million. And that doesn't include a lot of the personnel cuts. I calculate $3.1 million in cuts. Do we need a sales tax increase with that much reduction? No, we don't need so. We need to manage the money that we got right now, not spend any that we don't have, not project that you're gonna have this much money when you're doing a general fund budget, and say that we're gonna have 300 homes built on, oh, even better than that. You're gonna have a huge factory built on the egg branch, and therefore it is gonna generate $4.7 million a year, so we can factor that into the budget, to balance the budget. When there's no inclination at all that you're going to buy into building a warehouse on the egg branch, but yet it's factored in on the budget.
Herb, you're talking about cuts. Do those cuts go from the bottom all the way to the top, or
Absolutely.
or do
No,
they stop?
I'd just as soon start from the top, and work down.
Because I know there's a lot of places in the top, and I don't mean to be redundant, but I really do not condone lifetime benefits for
Absolutely.
dependents.
I don't agree with it either. When you're a sitting council person, you get $600 a month, and then $1,500 medical. That's what you get. That equates to about $18,000 a year per council person. But then there's other things that you have to factor in as well, matching Social Security and FICA, and then they pay 4 to 6% of their 8% contribution to PERS. I was under Social Security, and I was under PERS as well, Public Employees Retirement System retirement. Everybody wants to be in PERS because that's the Cadillac of all of them. But ultimately, that's the Cadillac that's going to destroy the whole system in California. It destroyed San Bernardino, and they're still fighting. The employees are still fighting to keep it. So the federal courts, the federal judge says, and I quote, no, everything is up. You can bargain on anything because it's a contract just like anything else under PERS. So you can argue, but I think my point is these may not be all the cuts that we have. These may not be the most sensitive. I'm not a sensitive person. I'm fiscally looking at things. I used to have a little Irish boss years ago in the 70s. And he used to tell me, he says, to be able to do an evaluation of somebody, you have to be able to evaluate yourself first. So sit down and evaluate yourself and be honest. Then that'll give you an opportunity to evaluate your employees. What he also said was, and he probably got this from Andrew Jackson, because Andrew Jackson said, don't come to me with a problem unless you've got a fix for a solution for the problem. Otherwise, all you're doing is whining. That's all you're doing. I want to know what your solution is to the problem. Is this going to solve it? This is a start. This is better than what we're doing right now. And if they did implement these things with a 3-0 vote or the 3-2 vote, yeah, it would save a chunk of money. But it's going to take 3 people on council to do it. And right now, there's not 3 people on council that would even consider looking at this. In fact, when I brought this up, I was told, as well as the audience, well, if you don't like it, you probably should move out of Norfolk.
How many times have I heard that?
And, well, I used to be told I hadn't been in Norfolk long enough to have an opinion too. Because I got on council after 3 years in Norco, because I just moved in 97, late 96, when I ran for council in 99. And and I was told, you shouldn't even have an opinion about Norco until you've been here for 10 years. And I kind of looked at him funny and I said, well, you know, I still pay taxes here. I should have an opinion just like anybody else. And if you don't like it, in my usual phrase, tough shit. I have a tendency to do that sometimes. Yes, you have a question?
Yeah, we have a time limit. We
Yeah.
know we're gonna be out of money, the city's gonna be broke.
We already are.
I know, but I meant to the point to where, I mean, Riverside doesn't want us, we're too far in debt. Rona says, you bet we want you.
No, we'll never, truthfully, we'll never be at that point. We won't be.
If
we
we
have
continue on the course we are, there's no way we can not be at that point.
We have, remember, 2 different issues. You got a general fund that pays the bills, the salaries, and other things.
Yeah,
Then you've got the capital improvement project.
Okay.
Now, those get bounced back and forth depending on where the money's at.
Exactly.
That's the reality
Okay, but
of
her,
city
my
business.
question is, since our council won't even consider any of these cuts, they're doing what needs to be done, do we have any recourse? as
Yeah,
taxpayers?
elect people that'll sit down and work something
That's gonna be
out.
another 4 months. We're gonna be 4
Well-
months more down the road, closer to the situation we're trying to avoid.
I posted on Facebook,
I mean,
when I was getting my 30 signatures, I was shocked. Because when I would have asked somebody, do you vote, you register? No, I'm not. Don't hold it against me, my vote doesn't count. They've already got their minds made up. This is the 18 to the 35-year gap. That group, they don't care. And I'm not talking about the 100% of them, I'm talking about the percentage that I talked to. One of them was my horse trainer, and she said, my dad's been after me for 10 years to get me to vote. I'm not, I don't care. I don't care. They're gonna do what they wanna do anyway.
Wow.
Now,
That's how they get to do what they want to
let's
do.
go back and realize that you've got an election coming up. Whether, who you vote for, that's your issues. But what I'm telling you is, these are problems that can be fixed. You don't need a sales tax increase. You don't. You've got to fix the problems, then look and see if you need more money. But at least you've made the attempt to say, well, by golly, we've made these cuts, we don't need a 1% sales tax increase. Let's just do a quarter.
But in an ideal world, we would get 3 like-minded thinking people I mean, let's face it, we know what's happened with the sitting council. Okay, say we get 3 people in there. If they don't think enough alike to be able to accomplish these things, we're not gonna have a 3-2 vote, so we're not gonna go anywhere. What do we do? I mean, do you have any ideas as to what you're suggesting? You know, you're saying, okay, vote, get people in that are like-minded, in other words, right? That people who care about the economy and have the audacity to go up against the others and say, look, this is what we have to do. That we need 3 of those. How are we gonna do that?
You need people that can sit down in a council chair and have an opinion and be contrary to the majority of the opinion, but be able to have their votes sway based on what they're hearing, or sway other people into their belief. That takes a unique person to do that. It does.
But you've had 3 terms fighting them,
Mhm.
and I know you fought them. And I know a percentage of the time you do win and you do sway them. Look at all the battles that, I mean, they're stuck.
Won 40% of the time.
That's very good,
Yeah.
very good. But what about 60%?
But, well, if I wasn't
How important
there,
are those?
if I hadn't have been there, would we have won the 40%? I don't know.
No, I'm not saying you failed in any way, Herb. I'm just saying that these are things that we have to consider going into this election.
You need somebody with fiscal responsibility,
Right.
an eloquence to express their opinion in an affirmative manner, understands the city, the finances, the breakdown of it, the staffing needs, what's going on. That's the person that you need to elect.
Trying to get somebody to run. I mean, we've got 4 new people.
I tried 8
And
people.
2 past people that are gonna.
8 people I talked to try to get them to run. 8 people
Talked to more
that
than
I thought could do exactly what I thought you needed to do to get in, to have some fiscal responsibility, be able to communicate, understand the needs, and then convince people through prior management skills to say, okay, this is what we need to do. If we don't do this, then this is what's going to happen. I even tried to get Harvey to pull his papers.
We're still trying.
I still, to this day,
We want him to. We
as
really
much
do.
as we disagreed on things, we were together on a lot of things too. So, Linda Dixon, Jeff, but you know, you can't condemn these people because it's like whether I asked the gentleman and I wasn't trying to make you look bad. I think my point being is, look, I talked about it before, you got 4 hours a week away from your home that you can dedicate to other than your job, your family, and rest. 4 hours out of a 40-hour week. How you spend that 4 hours is so critical in your life. Would you rather spend that at a city council meeting for 4 hours? Or would you rather spend it at a golfing range someplace for 4 hours? That's the commitment that we make in this town. And that's why when you asked me to come and talk, that's what I wanted to get across. This place will not survive if we cannot get people with the ideas that's in this room, the attitudes of the people that's in this room, to step up and say, I've had enough. I did it in '99, now it's your turn. Yes.
The problem is, when we go to vote, we don't know enough about all the people.
They give us a little blurb.
Yeah, everybody's talks a big ride, but we're like, wait a minute, which one,
Well,
you know, which way are you
We got
leaning?
media now.
Ted Hoffman is having a meet and greet at Linda Dixon's this weekend.
No,
Or go by and talk to him. Find out if he's who you want to vote for.
Call them.
Who else?
Berwin's having-
Berwin's having one. Go talk to him. Find out if he's what you want. Pin him down, ask him, ask
Ted.
Ted.
Have one too.
Right on my Facebook page, I tell you exactly where I'm at.
I mean, that's how you fight it. When I vote for assembly or I vote for a county supervisor, I stand and talk to them. Yeah, I'm one vote, but if I can tell another 500 people, I ain't voting for this guy. Well, as a city council person, how many people are gonna vote with me? So you're not talking about just one vote, Ted. You're talking about your neighbors, because you're gonna tell your neighbors, no, I talked to these people. I don't trust them. They didn't give me the right answers. Next time, I'm gonna run myself.
See, but you're in the know, so I feel like I
And
should
get,
come
and
talk
get
to
your
you.
neighbors.
But that's my point. I've been saying for years. You know, Nellie Hatton said that she's thinking about pulling her papers, but she's sure she's gonna lose. Then pull your papers. I'll help you. I'll teach you. I'll tell you about government. Just if you're thinking about it, pull your papers. You lose, so what? Well, you'll get your face out there, and next time you'll have a heck of a better chance of winning. Because people will know your position. I try to get Glenn to run. Glenn would be great. And he keeps shaking his head no.
He's busy being the president of NRA. I mean, that keeps him busy.
Well, but and I think that's my point, you know, and this is what I'm thinking. These are my points that I was gonna talk about at council. So I'm not saying anything here that I didn't already start at council. I'm not adding anything to it that I didn't or wouldn't have said at council. So I'm not violating anything or any conscious effort to say, vote for me and because I'm the mayor and all that. No, I'm not saying that. Realistically, you look at this and you say, we got a problem, a 1%